All right, we're live. Shining, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just introduce people because I know they're probably wondering what's going on. So yeah, guys, we're doing a podcast today in the morning, 5 a.m. My time. We are Shining was having some technical difficulties regarding his channel, so we're going ahead and continuing his previous podcast there, and we're going to go ahead and transfer over to mine. So yeah, Shining, take it away.
Yeah, I appreciate that element. Thanks very much for that. Peace, brothers. Greetings, gentlemen. Welcome to the podcast. I know some of you were looking forward to this, so I apologize for it being late. I probably should have done a few dry runs before setting up. It appears that YouTube or Google has again completely rearranged the live streaming setup. So I've been caught with my pants down on this one, unfortunately. Hopefully, we'll be being joined by Messenger, and maybe later uh, Johnny might jump in. But we've got
Yeah,
some
it's a
great
little too
topics
early
today.
for him. I don't think he'll be here. I
No,
thought I was.
I just seen him pop his head up in the
Oh,
chat.
really? Was he
Yeah,
was he turtle head poking out?
look, can you see him? His head's just popped around. Look, he's there. Can you see? Can you
Oh,
see?
there he is. Okay, I see that he's online. Jump
Yeah.
in, Johnny. We're here.
But
How you up
we've
so
got some
early?
great
Surprising
topics.
me.
It's been such a long time since we've podcast that a lot of the pent up thoughts have been building up, and hopefully we're going to have a useful and good discussion. Hopefully we'll. I know you said earlier this week that you didn't want to go over some of the old topics. I know it's something that Messenger finds slightly cliche, but I think it'll be interesting to see where we've gotten along with some of the old topics that we talked about, and hopefully we'll just touch upon some stuff that I think a lot of people will be wondering about. I mean, I think it would be nice if Messenger comes along. We can let the guys know why we've been aloof. Why we haven't been podcasting as regularly.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's good that we, you know, I mentioned to Shining that basically, one of my points was basically, yeah, I mentioned to him, I said, that we've gone over so many different topics that we really didn't, at least for myself personally, I didn't know what to, present that hasn't been already discussed. But I think the direction of this podcast could indicate, how are we doing at this point in time? More likely would be the best way of approaching it. How has our progression been? How have we been doing? How far have we come? How has our progress been going? I think that's a good, thing to show. I've certainly learned a lot. I've certainly have always been inclined to learning different things, and always been, wanting to learn as much as I can about the world that I live in is the most important thing. And that's an ongoing process. It's a never-ending process, really. It's something that has been a ever-evolving process because there's always different things to learn, and of course, there's always things that are going on in the world that is needing to be kind of kept up with. But in some respects, that's one thing we'll be getting into today. Um, you know, World events and things like that. I have a different approach to it that I think many of my subscribers, and I'm sure people that are just tuning in would agree to as well, that a lot of this stuff kind of gets redundant after a while. And part of our own journey is that we must learn how to realize what's important and what's not. And a lot of the stuff going on out there is not as important as people think it is. Um, that's my own opinion, and I think I think most people agree with that.
all right, so okay. Can you see that? Okay, here we go. I think I know what's going on. We need to allow him to join by link. Just a sec.
Okay.
Ooh, having to learn this very quickly,
That's okay. It's easy. We
but
got it.
but to answer the question that I just posed, I mean, I was quite happy to dive out of the YouTube scene. I was quite content that um, not that YouTube shut my channel down, but I just used that as a prompt that it's, my time has come. Hence my channel name, Man Out of Time. I ran out of time, so I was quite happy for the next group of men to take over to podcast, to develop on the points that we picked up on the previous. I mean, some of uh, the topics I picked out from were from channels like Man Woman Myth, were some of Barbarosa's old stuff, were some of the old discussions that the earlier manosphere, the earlier men's discussions had. I had a good I think at least 3.5 years where my channel was picking up and people were picking up on my talking points, and I was quite happy to pass the gauntlet along. But I think most people will agree with me. It's been quite dry. The level of intellectual development, the level of male sovereignty, men going forward, men coping with the shit that's going and happening has been quite dry. It's been quite disappointing. I'm not saying it's been totally bad. I mean, some of the old channels that I watch are still there, and it's quite good to see some of the old friends still on there. I'm still watching. Believe me, I'm still watching all you guys. I might be quiet, but keeping an eye on all the old friends. But in terms of helping men uh, come along and coping in this quite destructive matrix, it's been quite disappointing. We've been caught up in identity politics. We've been caught up in in that in the social narrative. We've been caught up in all that old tribalism stuff, and obviously the shields have come round in their droves. So it's been disappointing in that way.
Yeah. Looks like Messenger's joined us. Welcome, Messenger. I think that I always forget that the invite link is different than the actual link on the top there. So I always forget about that. But yeah, I'm shining at, this is a recurring thing that I've discussed before on my channel, that, the world is, how can I say this? The world is, at this point in time, is very unstable in many respects. I guess you can argue to say it's always been unstable. But at this point in time, like you said, we have so much distraction going on, identity political nonsense, that, I was talking about this with Shining off air at one point. I said, I kind of live in a bubble now in a lot of ways. I don't watch or keep up with as many people as I used to, because I've realized that my life is, I might be young, but I like to look ahead and plan ahead. And I realize that as I get older, I realize that from my own knowledge, things are changing quite quickly. Probably not in the best of respects for men and for people in general. So I have to prioritize what is going to be worth my investment. What is going to be worth as I get older and as the world continues to change, if we're still here by the time I get 40, 50, or, whatever. What is going to be worth my investment? Because the way I see things, from what I keep up with of the world, I try to keep my finger on the pulse of what's going on and realize and kind of sort through a lot of the nonsense that is going on, to see what's important, what should I pay attention to, and what shouldn't I pay attention to. I would say 90% of the stuff out there is a bunch of crap. Most of it is irrelevant. Most of it is coded, meaning that it means a whole nother thing compared to what people think it means. And because of that, people, in terms of the propaganda machine, will get sucked into this battle, I guess you could say, that's been playing itself out against people in general, trying to get people to fight over a subtopic of what they see on the surface more than what's really going on underneath it. And the problem that I think we're facing is that we're having the situation where people really don't care to learn what they really should learn. I've spent a long time, a lot of my free time, I guess you could say, studying about the different things that have orchestrated itself in our world and how um, the propaganda kind of manifests itself and why people are the way that they are, social engineering, things like this.
Well,
Um,
well, before we go on, before you, sorry to interrupt you there. Let's just bring Messenger in on this. I know a lot of people will be wanting to hear from Uncle Messenger himself. It's been some time since
Uncle
he's been
Messenger.
on.
Well,
I know, I've been on your channel a couple of times, but let's bring Messenger Rising on this, aka Lazarus. But I'm sure the guys will be wanting to know where you've been, how you're doing, old friends and new friends alike. So, how have you been, Messenger, and why haven't you been doing stuff on your channel?
oh, I've been busy. I think that's what happens when you create a new life for yourself. You just become really busy. So I work, I study, I look after my daughter when she's around, um, and when I'm not doing that, I sleep. And I was talking to some of the other guys yesterday, Jeff and Warhorse, about how we have to organize our own alone time now. We have to organize our solitude. Otherwise, people just, they just impose themselves on you and they start trying to organize your time off for you, like friends or family. They might organize things and invite you and sort of insist that you turn up. And I don't think a lot of people appreciate that some of us don't want to do those things. Some of us like being alone, and now we've got used to it. We don't want to lose that solitude. So that's what I do. I don't get enough alone time. I work hard. I study. I raise my child, and I sleep. And I think that's just about it, really.
So that's a nice thought, though. I mean, I don't think enough men they set aside some. I call it contemplation time. I know me and
Yeah,
you, Messenger, we've talked about solitude before, but the negative connotations from that term aside, I mean, setting aside thoughts where I theorize that's why we dream. To cut a long story short, I think we dream because the human mind needs time to digest the things we see, the things we hear, and the things that we feel as well.
yeah,
Just thoughts over time that they build up, and your mind, your consciousness needs a way that probably we won't be able to describe here, or probably in the near future, to process all the things we've learned, all the things we see and hear. And I seriously think that's why we have dreams, because that's, well, psychologists say that's our unconsciousness trying to process our everyday thoughts. But yeah, alone time, meditation time, prayer time, whatever you want to call it, I don't think men think about themselves and their position and their
that's
situation.
exactly that is exactly the point. The subconscious mind is at play 95% of the time. When people are conditioned to behave in certain ways, they never stop to question why they do things. And this ties in with what Element was saying. People just live in this simulation. They never question it. They just go along with whatever social media approves of, whatever their families condition them to believe and do. They live their lives not choosing or making decisions for themselves. That those decisions are already made, or else you will be shamed into conforming. You know, so the subconscious mind that works when we're asleep is, for the most part, the same subconscious mind that works for most people when they go about their daily business. Because when we practice our introspection, when we find our alone time, when we make that alone time, we then engage our conscious mind and we begin to rationalize. Why are people behaving like this? Why do I do these things? And we start to reflect. And not only do we reflect on people outside of ourselves and the influence they have on each other and the influences they've had on us, we reflect on ourselves. And that's where the work begins. When we start to say, right, I don't want to be this person anymore. This was never my choice, whether I was conscious of it or not. Now I am. Now I have to do the work to change that, to undo the conditioning, to rewire all of those dysfunctional connections that have been made for us. It's sort of subliminal in a way, but yeah, that's how we disengage. We stop and we say, no, I just want to step out for a minute. And in this alone time, I'm going to question everything. And if I don't want to be a part of it, if I don't want to conform, then I'm going to say no. And no amount of shaming, no amount of demanding or stamping your feet or, name calling or whatever people want to do to try and get us to conform, no amount of that will stop us from sitting alone and questioning, what this whole thing is about.
I
That's,
don't think I don't think they question it up until the point it goes seriously wrong. I mean,
yeah,
the reason why uh, the men are gather around spaces like these is because they've had that what they call red pill. I know they've totally screwed that term up. I know YouTube and idiotic skeptics and the all the idiotic shills have totally ruined the term red pill. But when they get that red pill moment, when they going back to the film The Matrix, when Neo takes that red pill and it's all explained to him. For a lot of men, it was when they realized that they weren't in control, that the government were not there for their benefit, that uh, the families their children didn't belong to them as the government regards it. You don't own anything. Basically, you are a piece of shit to the government and to women. Just to put it in basic context there. But it's not until things go seriously wrong that people begin to wonder. Who am I? Why am I here? What are we doing? Where are we going? And I
I think
think
to redefine the meaning of the red pill simply means to realize what's truly important. I think it means, to realize what's really important in this world. We're filled with so much distraction and so much nonsense and so much garbage thrown at us, political, sociological, with money, with our job, with our personal issues. This world is so set on us, failing at everything we try to do to make ourselves better. It seems like everything that we try to do in terms of a group or in terms of people trying to make something happen, there's always a wrench thrown in it. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think it's obvious that that's no coincidence, because this place wants to keep us in chains. It wants to keep us here constantly in an endless cycle of repeating our same mistakes over and over again so that we never learn and never escape from, this kind of mind maze that we find ourselves in. And so I think what it simply means when you take the red pill, in other words, to redefine that meaning, it's just simply to realize what's really important, because our whole lives have been distracted with a bunch of nonsense from school all the way up to, adulthood and in our later years. And I think once you find out that that stuff's important, things change.
well, then, if I may, I know I sent you guys a list of topics. I think this works nicely into the topics that I think I hope you guys will find interesting as well. And one thing you wanted to talk about, Messenger, was some philosophies, or as I put it, functional philosophies, and how having a functional philosophy or a state of mind that is appropriate or works in this matrix, in our circumstance and situation that we find ourselves. What kind of philosophies, or how do we develop philosophies or develop that state of mind that will help us traverse this matrix that will help us get along in this destructive and detrimental environment that we sometimes, to be fair, we sometimes find ourselves in. I know sometimes we can overplay this this gynocentrism. Sometimes we can overplay the destructiveness of life. But my philosophy is life can be good as well as it is bad. I think that's why we talk about and develop some of the philosophy. So, how or where do we find a functional philosophy, others?
Well, I tend to borrow from philosophies. I don't sort of steer towards one or another, or label myself an existentialist or hedonist or whatever. But I do borrow from philosophies, and in that respect, it's a bit like an MMA fighter. In that respect, you'll take the best techniques, and they may be tailored to you. You know, they may only specifically work for you because of your personality or your physicality or whatever. But for me, the philosophy has to be built upon, first and foremost, because of my own personal experiences, self-preservation. If I take on board aspects of a philosophy or any philosophy that takes me down the same road I've been down in the past, that has crashed and burned and caused me financial loss, psychological pain, separated me from my child or anything like that, that's not going to form part of a healthy, positive philosophy for me. Which is why all the online manosphere stuff now is dangerous. I won't go there. I've been there before, and I was there before I came to the manosphere. So yeah, I understand female nature, and I understood it before I came to the manosphere. But what I need to understand now, I've learned a lot more about male nature from being around men, but I've learned a lot more about myself. So in terms of a personal philosophy, it has to, first and foremost, be one of self-preservation. I have to keep away from anything that's going to ruin my life. And I don't frown upon hedonism, but the term is misunderstood. Epicurean hedonism is the same as any natural drive within any organism. You know, you steer yourself towards things which you find pleasurable, but it's up to you to decide then whether the consequences of that activity are going to be good or bad. And now that's the distinction we have to make between someone being hedonistic and someone being debaucherous. And I've spoken about that on the other channel. So hedonism, Epicurean hedonism, also encompasses pain. You aim to make your life as pleasurable as possible, but you avoid pain. And even the most basic organism will steer towards sources of warmth or sustenance and avoid extreme heat, extreme cold, pain. It's just natural, it's innate. But for me, my personal philosophy really won't apply to many people, just because culturally I'm different. I live in a different environment. Everything about me is different. I have a child. A lot of men don't have children. So yeah, it's something you tailor to yourself, and it takes time. It takes years. You might never achieve it in a lifetime, but I think if you're working towards those ends, then at least you're going in the right direction, rather than hitting the self-destruct button and saying life's a big party, I'm just going to fucking burn out and fade away. That's, it's not too clever. Not in the present time. Not if you're a man.
Mm. Well, how about you, Element? I know you're from a different generation to us. For guys that don't know, you might find I'm a little bit informal towards Element. That's because me and Element, haven't we? We've been on a constant contact.
Yeah.
Basically, Element is my gaming partner. Me and Element we're busting out the Xbox on a daily.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So if you guys might have noticed, I'm a little bit more informal towards Element because I just
No, that's okay. I mean, that's, I think that is in perfectly with Messenger's statement that, you know, I think it also goes back to what Shining said about, and also myself, why we are, um, we haven't been, as up to date, at least myself, I speak for myself in this, with what's going on, because even my own personal opinions about things have changed. Before, when I was doing videos about certain things, I was mentioning, and I still do hold this belief, I was mentioning about how, I mentioned this in a video, I said, as I get older, you die every day, you get older every day, and you have a short time to figure out what this world is about, and realize, what's worth paying attention to and what's not worth paying attention to. From my, research into my own personal things I find interesting, most of it's crap. Most of it is not worth your time. Politics is not what people think it is. Some of it is worth your time. Most of it is not. And, you know, what the thing that's changed for me is I've kind of realized, I have a small group of friends that I keep close, that I talk to regularly. And that's about it for me. I do not care about really anything else going on other than my little circle of things, because every single time that I have tried to branch out, it's always disappointed me. Whether that's, politically, I try to look at other people's viewpoints. I've never gotten a satisfying answer that satisfies the questions that I have. So, what Messenger was relating to about, hedonism, and finding things that you enjoy, basically things that you find worth your time, is, I think, at this point in time, very important. Because when we look around us in the world, we see so much, nonsense, and it's getting more and more absurd by the day. Are you going to waste your valuable, precious time on this nonsense, or are you going to live your life the way you want to do it and do the things that you want to do? I think that's more important than what Kavanaugh or this idiot is doing. I don't care about any of it. It means nothing. It means absolutely nothing of what people think it does. And it's not worth getting all stressed out. I always notice this in Shining, um, we mentioned about the manosphere, or you mentioned about the manosphere and the disappointment of the involvement of it. Um, I think that when you see how easily people are willing to go along with whatever they want to, whatever is told to them, they'll believe anything. Something comes out in the news, they go, "Oh, I have to make a video about this." It's like, no, you don't. You don't have to make a video about any of it. You can actually live your life and not care about it and pretend that it never existed. Because you see, this is the thing that they want, I think, people to do. This is the thing that gets us caught up into this dilemma that we find ourselves in, I think, in a lot of ways. I think the world is an ever evolving process. You must learn, you must keep growing, and realize, I think, by the time you're in your 30s and even in your mid 20s, I would say, you should have learned by now that most of the stuff you've been told to is a lie, and everything you've been told to pretty much is a lie. Nobody tells anybody the truth about anything. Everybody lies to everybody about something, and especially, the things or the people that run this place. And we must realize that. We must realize that we have to find I think the mission, the most important thing is to realize what's truly important. Messenger said, it's his time spent with his child. For me, it's the time I spend learning about what I need to do as I get older to benefit myself. And I think that's one thing I'm very grateful for. is that I guess I've been gifted with the mind to be able to want to learn this stuff, because that's the dilemma. Most people don't care or want to learn about any of the stuff of the world and how it really works, and they'll go along and they'll believe whatever they're told to believe for financial reasons or otherwise. But getting back to the point, um, I think for myself at this point in time, going back to my comment about why it is that we've been missing and why it is that we have been kind of distant, it's because I've realized, as I've gotten older in months, not in years, through my knowledge and seeing the condition of the world and in people in general, I don't want to waste any more time with things that don't matter to me anymore. All that I care about now is what matters to me. And I think, this is a question that I have for Messenger and for you, Shining, that, you know, how have we progressed in our knowledge since where we started when we all met each other? Look how far we've come in this whole big thing. And we've lost a lot of friends. I guess maybe some of those people you wouldn't call friends. But we have come a long way, guys, through this whole thing, through thick and thin. Look how far we've come, and look at how much we've evolved through this whole process. My question is, what was life like before you knew this stuff? Before that you came to this conclusion, whether it was about stuff in the beginning, about the manosphere, even not even that. That's just the basics. But where are you now, and how has that changed you? How has the development, happened, and where you are now?
That's an interesting question, but if I may, I want to pick up the points that you two have just dropped, and I'm sure a lot of the guys will also be wondering this. But the two of you said that you've restricted your basically. I'm paraphrasing. You've restricted your sources of probably entertainment. You've restricted your sources of information, so you're not watching as much YouTube channels, if at all, and you're restricting your activities, your social interactions with certain people or groups. So you've restricted it because you've gone through certain times, and you've decided, well, this is a good source, this is a bad source, this is a good company to have, this is a bad company. But the only way you guys found out was through trial and error. So you watched some good YouTube channels which you found benefit in, and which through time proved to be beneficial. And you've seen some bad YouTube channels, some YouTube channels, or some guys that have completely ignored the facts, the issues, or the discussions, and just gone along with either their whims, desires, or basically they've got some ulterior motive. So you two only learned that because you guys went through it. Now, guys that are just coming into this, and there's always guys coming in from all ages. I mean, you get guys just finding out about these issues. At 60 years old, some of them are young, and they might be more resistant to it due to their biological, their urges are going back to that old term, their male mother need. So should we have a certain level of patience, or a certain leeway we should, or a larger gap for these guys to come in, old and young? I mean, a lot of them, they'll be coming in with their old social conditioning. They'll be coming in with their tribalism, and we've seen these guys. You've seen them. Do you think that perhaps sometimes we can be a little bit intolerant of guys that are still learning or on the path? And I'm talking about guys that are learning, not guys that are just here because they want to have some fun, or because they're a bunch of shills, or they're just idiots. But I'm talking about guys that are new. They haven't been privy, or they haven't caught up to the previous knowledge. As you said, Element, we have come a long way. I mean, it's been years. We've been talking about issues. We've been talking about shit that happened years ago, and we've been trying to work out why it happened, how did it happen, how much accountability, on whose accountability did it happen, how could we avoid these situations. These were long discussions we had. We would go stay up all night talking to guys from all over, literally guys from all over the world. So obviously those guys, my channel's gone. They're not going to find those discussions again. But I think maybe if they rummage around, they'll be able to still get this information. So, do you think
I'll
that
let
sometimes we're a little bit harsh on these guys?
I'll let Messenger take that, and then I'll give my 2 cents on it.
Okay, well, I'll answer both questions as quickly as I can. Element's question was, what have we learned since we came here, and where are we now? Is that right, Element? Was that?
Yeah. Basically, we've come a long way. How is our progression from where we were then to where we are now? What have we learned, and how is things different than,
Right.
compared to what it was in the beginning to where we are now? How have we evolved, and where, after
Yeah.
you went through the war, what did you learn?
I think really, I came in as a really fractured, broken man. I came in midway through the breakup of a bad relationship about 5 or 6 years ago. I was actually in the manosphere commenting and watching videos before I started my channel. And I had all of that residual conditioning and confusion and anger. And the worst thing was injustice. I still had that injustice from the family courts because of parental alienation. So I came in as that man. And a lot of people didn't like it, and they didn't like to hear me be that angry, and they kept saying, calm down, whatever. They wouldn't let me work through the process, but I did it anyway. And that's what happened. I processed all of those emotions, all of the things that happened to me, and I came to realize that it is part of the human condition, really. I sort of work towards acceptance. I don't agree with it. I don't think it's right, but now I understand the way people are and the way they treat other people, which helps me avoid certain people and certain situations. So I think that's maybe what I've learned. I've learned to not be so trusting, not be not serve people. I've learned to be more selfish and self-serving, because at the end of the day, nobody gives a fuck about me. you know Very few people. I know I've got a few close friends around the manosphere, a small handful, who, if I really needed help, you know I know I could turn to, and I could trust. A very small handful. I can count them on one hand. But that's what I've learned. I've learned to keep my circles small. I've learned to always reflect on how I react to things, people, and I just learned, you don't have to trust everyone. You don't have to try and be good to everyone or try and help everyone, because it's not reciprocated. And ultimately, everyone will take a piece of you until there's nothing left. So I've just got the things I need. I've surrounded myself with those things. I've got a sustainable life. I try not to work too hard, which is difficult sometimes, because you can damage yourself and break down that way as well. You can work yourself into an early grave if you're in that type of profession. So those are the things I've learned, and those are the things I'm working on. But to answer Shining's question about men coming in and men going through that process, you can sort of see, if you sit on the outside and look in, you can observe pretty much where they are, what state they're in when they arrive in that manosphere. Unfortunately, now the information has changed. And here's one key thing about groups: people who attach themselves to a label and adopt a cult mindset, they will alter their behavior as the group changes, because they want to keep the label. And it happens so subtly. People don't realize that they're actually contradicting things they said years ago. They become hypocritical, and they actually follow something completely different years down the line. So when men come in, hopefully they get good information. That's number one. Hopefully they find good information, and and they don't get duped with a fake red pill, which is all about pump and dump and, you know, monetizing your channel and just parroting things that people have said before, but, you know, tailoring it towards your addictions because you're still on the plantation. You know, you still haven't left that matrix. You're still addicted to vagina. And this is the key thing. And this is something I was speaking to Jeff about as well yesterday. That addiction is a neurological addiction. And for people to come in and claim to be red pill, claim to be awake, you know, it's not possible if you haven't done the work, if you haven't changed the way you think, broken those neurological pathways. You know, you have to rewire your brain, and it takes time. It takes a long time, and it takes work. It takes introspection, and it takes alone time. If you're out partying, putting yourself in those environments where you're surrounded by women, the things which stimulate your addiction, your cravings, you're not going to break those connections. You haven't left anything behind. And you can see this in some of the content that's being made. You know, still obsessing over women and getting laid and whatever, whatever. When men come in, I give them a year. I used to, when I was interested, I used to give them a year, because it takes that long to see if the information's actually sinking in or whether they're just repeating what they've heard for money. Because they come in, see a money-making opportunity, they set up a Patreon or a PayPal, and to be honest, if you're making 2 or 3 videos a day, either you don't have a job or you don't have any interests outside of making money by making MGTOW videos. And I don't believe anybody comes to MGTOW with that much knowledge or experience that they can make 2 or 3 videos a day, sincere videos that bring new knowledge. You know, I just think it's just recycled garbage for money. So
Yeah.
I make allowances for people, but all I can see now is shills, men selling male suffering, talking about divorce, family courts. A lot of these are young men. They've never been divorced. They haven't got kids. What are they bringing to the table, you know?
They don't know
It's
what they're talking about.
They don't know what they're talking about. So it's
Exactly.
misinformation. And ultimately, they're racking their brains saying, I need to find a topic to talk about today because I want to build my subscriber base and I want more donations. And that's what it's become. So I don't make allowances for those people. I think, in the words of Mo Berg, anyone who remembers Mo Berg's channel, you know, if you're just out for donations, you're a loser.
Mm.
You're selling male suffering. So you're no better than the single mothers and any other fucking trashy whore who relies on men for handouts, because that's what these men have done. They've come to the manosphere, they've put out their begging bowls, and they expect other men to pay for their fucking lazy asses to sit at home and make MGTOW videos. That was never what MGTOW is about.
If I can
MGTOW
add
was
to that,
sincere. It was
if,
pure.
if I can add to that, because my question was posed on behalf of a lot of people that listen to us. Now, you guys out there that think that sometimes other men are quite harsh, meaning you say something, you know, you come in, you say something, and you get shouted down at. You have to understand, a lot of these guys have been through shit you would not imagine. You know, we've been, you know, other men, you know, we talk about suicide, we talk about losing kids, it's all about men being homeless, shit like that, you know, and then for a guy to then come in to ride on the tail of that issue, of that very somber and awakening issue, for them to then say, okay, now donate to my Patreon, or you know, buy my sex doll. It trashes on the whole thing. You know, that's why some men seem angry to you. That's why some men seem harsh when you jump on, when you take that narrative that we were talking about, and then you use it to sell sex dolls. You use it to sell your political tribalism. You use it to sell your own what's that new word that's coming about? Social authority. For fuck's sake. Yeah, I mean, we've come to a new level of shill, the social authority shill. So for guys listening, you have to understand why sometimes other men can sound so angry, because they've been through it. They've lost literally everything. All they've got left is the clothes on their back and their worn out shoes, and they've had to rebuild it, like Rudyard Kipling says in his poem, rebuild it with worn out tools. So I think I'm just saying, on both sides, you have to understand where the other side is coming from. But no, I think I'm not on board with you guys. I think I'm more elitist than both of you guys. I think I've got less people on my contact list than you are. But I was just trying to.
Well, I think that's also a good point. That kind of follows into what I was going to say. My advice, going back to your question, Shining, for young guys like myself, I guess, what they're coming into this thing trying to find answers. For my experience, I would say this. Number one, trust yourself and your gut instinct, and don't trust anybody else, because you are all you've got. No matter what anybody else says, you have to trust yourself first. You have to be your own counsel on everything. No, the teachers aren't going to be your counselors. The government is not going to be your counselors. Your family is not a good counselor, because they grew up with you and they say they want the best for you, but they don't know what the hell they're talking about. And even your friends, you have to be careful with your friends, because if you don't have a healthy relationship with your friends, and there's a mature relationship and an understanding between what's going too far and what's, crossing the line and not showing respect, then forget about it. It's not going to work. You have to be your own counsel with all of those things. You have to be the one to say, okay, this is too far. If you don't cut that crap out, we're done. I can't have this in my life. I can't deal with it. I have enough on my plate, and I have enough worries and my own things I have to contend with, than for a friendship or something along those lines to not show respect, because that's just going to add to the problem I already dealing with. So you have to trust yourself, because you're all you've got. Number two, obviously, don't trust anything that you call an authority figure at all, because they lie to you every day, and they will never tell you the truth until the day this place blows up or the apocalypse happens. They will lie to you to the day of the end of the world. They will never tell you the truth about anything, and everything they tell you is a lie. So do not ever trust what you call authority figures ever again, because they have lied to you since birth, and they will lie to you to the end of your days. Don't ever trust them, and you always question everything. Absolutely everything, you question it. Doesn't mean you go and you tell people about it, because they don't understand either, because they haven't worked through these understandings or had the experience to realize this. Number three, you never trust the news, of course, ever. That's common sense. And if that's not common sense to you now, then you have a lot of work to do. You need a lot of research you got to look through, and you got to realize what you're really contending with. Now, that's scary, because most people aren't even at that level yet. They'll believe whatever they're told to believe, which is unsettling, which is why the steps I mentioned before are even more important, because we live in a world full of idiots, and those idiots will believe whatever they're told. And when you're surrounded full of a bunch of idiots, you're going to go down with the idiots, and you're going to end up suffering a life of untold misery that you could have avoided by keeping your own counsel and trusting your gut and being smart. Not everybody's smart, but it doesn't mean that you can't learn nothing. And the fourth thing I would say is, don't trust what you hear on YouTube. We just talked about that a second ago. YouTube is full of a bunch of nonsensical garbage now. I think before, it used to be something worth putting my time into. This is why I'm only subscribed to like maybe a handful of people now. It's what Shining was saying, and what I said to him personally. I said, I don't even, look, man, I don't even go on YouTube anymore, because I am so tired of all of this nonsense I see, and I don't have everything is a repeat of a repeat. Everybody's talking about the same things, and like Messenger said, it's, if you got a PayPal or you're in for the money or any of that stuff, they're just going to recycle the nonsense. You're not learning anything, and you're wasting your time. So cut that stuff out. There is such a small number of people, and I don't mean to sound arrogant here, there's so much of a small number of people like us that try our best to tell it like it is the way that we see it. Some things that I research into, I don't talk about because it's taken me so long. It'd be like for me trying to explain quantum physics to somebody in the fourth grade. And for me, some of that knowledge I keep to myself because it's very personal and it's very out there. That's one thing that I'm willing to admit, that I say I don't share absolutely everything I know with everybody because of the nature of that. But the way that YouTube is now, you have to be so careful where you get your information from, because from day one, really, it's been full of a bunch of manipulators. And even more so, and as we continue to go on, these people are going to dig themselves into a hole until they're chipping away pennies to try to add up a dollar. And that is not worth your time if you truly are trying to learn about the way that things work here or try to better yourself in any regard. You're going to waste your time with any of these people that clout and claim that they're trying to help you, when every other video they say donate to this or give me money for that. It's a waste of your time. And finally, I would say, aside from what I've already mentioned, you always have to question everything, but be very cautious of your family too. Family, everybody clouts on family, but the family unit has been so manipulated and destroyed by so many different things over the previous generations. We're living in a completely different time than anything I think most of us have experienced before, and it's an ongoing process for me to try to play catch up with what they have been doing to us, or what they have been trying to manipulate us with. When you try to tell people, you be very careful who you tell to about this stuff, which goes back to, I think, being very careful who you keep your counsel with and who you befriend. Because I think, to sum up my point, as we move forward and as the world changes into a more unstable, I think, situation, people are going to get more, they're going to unravel their true colors, basically. And when that happens, you have to be very aware of what you decide to do from that point forward, and who your real friends are, whatever you want to call real friends, the people that basically respect you. Keep them close to you, because if things go south, at least you have people that you can trust. And most people from the manosphere, unfortunately, at least I thought, I could trust these people, but I learned very quickly that you can't trust really anybody, unfortunately. But through respect and people showing and proving themselves, I think through that, and they're willing to be mature about what they discuss and the respect they have for each other, that will prove itself to be that these people are willing to be with your counsel. So I know that was long-winded, but I think
let me pick up on that element, and this is something that I wanted both your opinions on. I know, Element, me and you, we've talked privately before, and well, look, in the chat, Icon says that that they probably want a civil war, and the shit will hit the fan soon enough. A guy, I think, Phosphorus, I think that's how you pronounce it. Freedom has got to be the most important thing. He says the entire world hasn't had that as far back as history. Generally, people have this this feeling that things are so fucked up, that life is shit. I think somebody, who was it? Well, this group of channels are saying that life is suffering. But basically, I wanted to ask you guys whether as part of your functional philosophy, if I mean, I brought up the film, the Shawshank Redemption. I'm sure most of you guys have seen that, but after watching that, I mean, you do ask yourself, should you have hope in your own future? Should you be optimistic about yourself and about the things to come, or is it just naivety? Should I know, Element, you would call it realism. You say things are fucked because you have to be realistic about it. And I think I said, well, that's more of the despairing type of attitude. And I would say having hope would be more beneficial to having a working state of mind than despair. I mean, what do you say, Messenger? If you remember, not so long ago, I said to you that channels like yours and mine, people like me and you, it's out. Our time is over. We should just fade away and let the whoever else pops up. Whatever channel, whatever personality comes along, tags a MGTOW label or tags immigration or tag whatever political meme is floating about. If that's what if that's what is going to happen, then that's really, people have only got themselves to blame, because really these are your this is your society. These are your men. These are be them feminists, be them shills, be them tribalistic idiots. These are your men. This is our society. You can ignore that. You can ignore them as much as you want, but the fact is, this is what society is made up of. This is the problems that we have to deal with. These are the men we have to cope with. And I was surprised that you said, no, I disagree. And I was surprised that you felt that there was more to be said, that you still did want to bring that message out. So I sort of felt that you still had hope in being able to address people. Whereas Element, I sort of felt that you was more in despairing of society. What's your view on that, Messenger?
The difficulty is changing people's mindset. Now, I'm not saying it's up to me or my job or my intention to change the way people think, but sometimes I see people getting stuck. And like you say, some people come in and you've got to make allowances for people who are still processing the information. That's fine. That's what we did. But it gets to a point where people have been around for years and they're still processing the same information. And a lot of them do a complete 180. They find nothing at the end of it and go back to the way they were. And they claim that's a revelation. They claim they're safer now because they've got all this red pill knowledge, and and they just go back, and next thing you know, they've got a girlfriend or they're in a relationship, and they say, that's okay, I'm not getting married. Now, you and I both know that you don't need to get married to get fucked over. The biggest threat to a man, and I've said this a million fucking times, I don't know why I have to keep repeating it, the biggest threat to a man is getting a woman pregnant. So if you claim to be red pill, if you claim to be fucking awake, and then you go back dating and sleeping with women, that's your choice. But just be aware of the fact that when you impregnate that woman, she and the government have complete control over you. So you're not free. You're not red pill. And I know that because I have a child and I have all of the ongoing problems that come with trying to raise a child when you've got an obstructive mother still in the picture and you've been through the family courts. So one thing people don't realize as well, if you have a child with that woman, she is then in your life for the next 20 years at least. That woman is still in your life, causing you problems, using your child to cause you problems. So, the whole message for me got old. Every video I was finding myself becoming frustrated and repeating myself. And men were saying, oh, don't tell us how to live our lives. We can have a girlfriend. We're just not going to get married. Fine, you don't understand. I'm trying to tell you as a man who does understand, who's been there. I'm almost 50 now. I'm almost 50. I'm coming up 47. I've lived, I've been around. You've lived, Shiny, and you've seen it. An Element takes on board what people say and he absorbs that information and he puts himself in that position and says, I don't want to suffer those consequences. And it frustrates me when more people can't do that. And that's the problem. What I wanted to do with the message was say, and we always used to talk about this, what is the end game? And my message was to be about, and is now, if you go to the Lazarus channel, what do you do as a lone male? Now you've left all of this behind, because most of these channels have not left it behind. They cannot leave it behind. But when you leave all that behind and stop going on about women and feminism and all that bullshit, when you leave all that behind, how do you navigate this world, this existence on your own successfully? And you know, it's difficult to get men in that mindset, and I think it's a very small minority of men who are capable of doing it. And this is the true MGTOW. If you want to use that acronym, if you want to put a label on yourself, this is the true MGTOW. The man who has left the matrix, the man who no longer plays on the plantation, not even on a Friday night when you sneak off and, you know, do your little pump and dump. This is the true MGTOW, the true man who goes his own way, away from gynocentrism, away from misandry. You know, he finds a way to isolate himself from the world, not because he's traumatized or he's scared. He does it for self-improvement. He does it because he knows there's nothing positive to be gained from engaging in those past activities. And this new man, this born again MGTOW, he considers the consequences of his actions. So rather than just looking for the next fix, the next hit, you know, the next high, we think, is that wise? Who made me make that decision? Did my own innate biological drive say to me, you know, you want to do that? Because nature isn't always our friend. Nature isn't man's friend. Nature is the thing that makes you chase women and want to reproduce. And then what happens? You know, family courts, child support, prison. So if that decision is coming from your own innate biological drives, you have to engage the rational mind and say, what are going to be the potential consequences, the outcomes of those decisions? Who's making me think like that? And that's your natural biological innate drive. And it's not working in your favor. So we have to overcome that. And then there's all the social conditioning, all the external environmental influences, whatever you look at on social media, on the TV, if you still watch TV, everywhere you go, fucking bombarded with all this shit, you know, marry, reproduce, fucking consume, you know, it is like the film.
Yeah.
All of that shit, those are your decisions. And again, we're back to the subconscious. You find yourself in positions, doing things, going to places, speaking to people, and you don't know how you arrived there. And it's because the subconscious was in control. You didn't stop and say, is this going to be good for me? Is this going to have a positive outcome? Is this going to improve my life? And is this going to be safe for me to do? And that's the message I wanted to get over to men. You know, leave all that shit behind. Leave all that. The more you talk about that shit, the more you're going to think about it. What's the new you going to look like? How are you going to build that man? What a journey that's going to be. How much work and how much time it's going to take to just forge a new existence that has minimal influence from your past, from social conditioning, and from your innate biological influences. That's, you know, that sums up where I'm at now, and that's the message I was trying to get across. It's quite advanced. People just coming into the manosphere, it's a revelation, you know, red pill this, hypergamy, Brefault's law, and wow, I'm fucking born again. You're not. You're still in the birth canal. When you finally get all that shit, all that knowledge absorbed, then you say, right, now I understand. That's bad for me. Leave it behind. Leave it behind. Start again.
Yeah, it's a big process. You know, we have a maze that we have to try to figure our way out of, and it's a big maze, and it's not just a physical maze, but it's a maze of the mind. It is a huge process that there's just no words to describe what it is, but it's a maze. I mean, it is a huge undertaking of the physical, the non-physical, the mental, the spiritual, um, philosophy, understandings, how to adjust your life. I mean, it is a complete revamp of a whole nother way of living beyond anything that we have been told or taught about or currently exist in. It's a huge, 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 huge deal. And that's why it takes, forever to even get started. But I wanted to go back to, Shining's point there. I think one of the reasons why I take my stance, I guess you could call it nihilism, is because I think partly the reason is, from what I've seen personally, I feel very disappointed in a lot of the things that I have seen, but I'm not upset about it. I'm actually very peaceful about it because I'm not trying to fight everyone to try to wake them up, so to speak. I'm kind of at a position now where it's like, I come on here and I do these hangouts with you guys because I enjoy talking. I enjoy having these discussions, and so that won't go away. That's not something that I want to change. But I think in terms of the world in general, I have a certain view of the world that I look at the world and I see people um, unwilling to budge from their comfort, and they want to be comfortable and they don't want to confront really awful truths that I think are very necessary to confront to find the answers. And I think, it's like when you're searching for diamonds, they're not buried underneath a palm tree. You have to dig and dig and dig and muck and in dirt and in just, work and slave to get these diamonds. And that's where the real truth lies, is in the really dirty reality of things, I think. And when you spend a lot of time in that muck, you you kind of realize what's really important, and you take away the fact that everything is not as important as you thought it was. All this, exterior nonsense of the world is not as important as what you found through that hard work. When all you see is dirt and muck, when you finally find that bit of truth, it's really not as pleasant as you would like it to imagine. Just like a diamond, they have to cut it. It's really dirty. It doesn't look pretty. They have to cut it a certain way and polish it, and then when it finally gets to the store, it looks amazing. But from where it gets there from the beginning, it looks like crap. But the point is, I think one of the reasons why I have the attitude that I have is mainly because I think I don't come across the right way in terms of, I guess, my understanding of things, because I really can't describe how I feel about things right now, to tell you the truth. So I just have realized what's really important, and I don't care about the world. I don't care about what happens to the world. I really don't. Um, I've realized that the world is its own entity. It's its own thing that constantly changes. It's its own maze. You call it the matrix or whatever. What I've found that really matters to me is whatever bit of family that I have and the relationships that I have with friends and the work that I do to try to understand things further is really all that I care about. And everything else I could give a damn less about. I don't care if this place blows up in a bajillion degrees or if nobody gets anything and they just end up being stupid. I don't really care, because it's not my job to save the world. It's not my job. I mean, who is to say what my job is to begin with? I think that's up for me to decide what I want to do. It's like dig in, have fun. And what I've decided to do is basically, you know, contribute in my own little way and try to understand things in my own little way the best I can. And whatever happens to the world, whether it's a World War III situation or whether people get what we're trying to tell them or not, I'm at peace with what I have finally come to the realization of. And That to me is the most important thing. Whether people see that as being doom and gloom or not, for me, I find peace in that. And I think, like Messenger was saying with philosophy, it's different for everybody how they approach this situation that we're in. I do have hope for some things, but it's not for the world. And it's not for people to wake up to realize things, because that's beyond anything that people really understand at this point. My hope is that people end up being at peace with themselves mainly, not with the world or with politics or with anything exterior, but with something that's in themselves, that they end up being at peace for whatever path they decide to choose. I think that's why, I think that's the most important thing at this point in time. Whatever calamity might be coming or not coming, or whatever happens, whatever, it's that people realize that they stop worrying about nonsense, realize what's important, and stick to that, because they will keep us fighting until the end of time. But what's important is that we be at peace with ourselves, because when that happens, that's when things change. But it's such a small number, and it, like Messenger says, it takes a long time to get to that point. And it's not this cut and paste cookie cutter vision of the world that everybody wants to believe, where everybody sings Kumbaya, holds hands, and wants to stop war. This is not like that. It has nothing to do with that. It's being at peace with what you have come to realize the world you live in is.
I'll tell you what separates one channel from another. I'll tell you what separates one man from another. And this is something I think a lot of guys found surprising. A lot of guys that don't know what I'm talking about. And that's men that care. I think it's quite obvious to some people, clearly not to everyone, that a guy that talks about life coaching, that he wants to help you get along, get more wealth, get healthier, and he's at the same time trying to flog you Cialis and Viagra. It's obvious this guy's a total. He doesn't care about men. The type of pump, dump, and pump advice he's trying to give. But I was surprised about what I learned about myself. I mean, you asked where I was before and where I am now. I was surprised that I did care about men. The reason why I was telling my story is because I didn't want any other child to lose his father, his or her father. Now, you guys know there are certain individuals I hate. I literally hate them. You guys know that watch my old channel. There are individuals on YouTube. I could not stand them. I hate them. But the thing is, I still care about them, believe it or not. I still care whether this guy is sick or this guy loses contact with his daughter. I don't think any man, no matter how corrupted he is, should lose contact with his children, because there is something innate in every biological father. This is I won't go off topic, but it's innate within every biological father that he has something to teach that child. Now, what that is, it's not easily defined. But even the man I hate the most, I and you guys could probably name these guys. I would never want to see him separated from his child. Never. And I would never want to see him homeless, being kicked in the dirt like a lot of men are. And this is what I found surprising. That the fact is, I think men do care about each other. If they're given a chance to be removed out of social conditioning, to be removed out of this dog eat dog social engineering, men do actually care about each other. That's what sets the difference between one channel and another. See, one channel, he's deeply inserted in the matrix. All he cares about is getting those donations. All he cares about is selling that Viagra. He doesn't care what consequences his actions and his words do. All he cares about is a couple of dollars going in his bank account. Now, there are other guys. They will put their careers, they will put their identity on the line to get out the information, to save as many men from going down that destructive path as possible. This is what I found. This is the difference between left and right. This is the difference between men. You remember a few years back, people were trying to pigeonhole us into, okay, what group are you in? What political stance are you in? What religion are you? Are you an atheist? Remember that shit back then? And we never talked about that. It was only when they went down that route. And obviously, again, these were men that didn't care about other men. When they talk about, well, what group are you in? Because I want to know whether or not I should hate you. I want to know whether or not I can talk shit, this load of shit that I've heard on this channel about you. And obviously, a lot of it is false. A lot of the Matrix is an illusion. When you start to pigeonhole men and you think you know this person because you know everything about their group or their tribe, obviously, people still haven't learned. This doesn't work. This doesn't separate men. Because we're all from different philosophies. We're all from different backgrounds, different upbringings. Our beliefs, our experiences are all quite different, and quite often we're all a mixture of different tribalistic beliefs and backgrounds. So to define a men on those terms, people should have learned it doesn't work. Not every person from a certain group is the same. And I think really, when we talk about groupthink, I think that's where the problem is. People, they think, well, I have to go along with my group. I have to go along with my friends because this is good. Otherwise, I'll be socially outcast. And I think this is one of the roadblocks men run into. That they're finding it difficult to separate or to resolve their cognitive dissonance because they don't want to be socially outcast. So I think I might have gone a bit off the topic there.
That's okay. Go with the flow.
You've that sort of segues nicely into that altruism topic you're talking about, because a man's capacity to have empathy for another man is based on the similarities or differences there are between the two. And it's been statistically proven in psychology experiments, all sorts of facts and figures have come out. But basically, if you've got such a diverse range of labels that you've placed on yourself or that other people have placed on you, so you're in so many groups, the mere fact that another man says, I've been thrown under the bus, I'm fucked, I'm homeless, I don't see my kids, you might say, I have compassion for you, I have empathy for you. You're a man, I'm a man, I've been there. But, and this is where the whole thing gets fucked up, if he's in a different group to you, if you're an atheist and he's a Christian, you might say, fuck you. You're just a Christian anyway, I'm an atheist, That's probably because you Christians believe in marriage and you're a tradcon. And the next thing you know, people's allegiance to other groups clouds the fact that at the beginning of this thing, we tried to do away with different concepts, for want of a better word, such as race and religion. We just wanted to stick to the fact that we are men. We're men. We face the same difficulties in life, the same discriminations. We face all of these workplace deaths, military deaths, the suicide stats, parental alienation, family court, every type of discrimination that men face. We all face it, regardless of race, religion, whichever fucking socioeconomic group you think you belong to or you would like to belong to. That should all be put to one side. You're a man, I'm a man, you're in trouble, I want to help you. But we learned the hard way that not every man thinks like this. Not every man has compassion and empathy for another man just because he's male. There's more to it. And one important thing while we're on the subject of empathy, people say sociopaths don't feel empathy. They recognize empathy. And this is what we're facing in the manosphere. There are sociopaths out there. There are con artists out there, snake oil salesmen out there who don't give a fuck about men, but they recognize empathy. They recognize compassionate, altruistic men, and they exploit them when they see that in them. And that's what's going on. So, as far as altruism goes, sort of linking into the next topic of altruism, can men afford to be altruistic? Your question is altruism a good trait for a self-preserving man to have? And my answer to that would be it depends who you have compassion and empathy for, who you try to help, whether or not it doesn't have to be reciprocal. I mean, obviously, altruism, that's the whole point of it. It's not supposed to be reciprocal. But then people have debated whether altruism actually exists or not. You know, you might want some recognition for the fact that you helped someone, which then means that it's not altruistic. You're trying to bolster your self-esteem or your position in the eyes of others. Look at me, I'm a fucking good Samaritan. I helped so and so over there. So altruism, I don't know. The one thing I've noticed, and the one thing I've learned about men, and the reason why men are so easily fucking manipulated, is because most men, and I can safely say most men, and we can use the manosphere as an example, will be swayed by women or money, and they will fuck another man over for women or money. And that's what we're seeing happening. That's why the manosphere failed. That's why MGTOW is a giant heap of shit. Because men don't care about other men. Most men just want money or women. So altruism, don't know. I don't really.
We did talk. I mean, how many podcasts did we do on that? Men selling themselves short, or men selling out. You know, men being cheap. And face it, you know, it's a small price. A little bit of attention from a female, and all of a sudden, this man's changed his tune. This man's changed his group. This man's now changed his religion. This man, you know, a few dollars, or a promise of a few dollars. All of a sudden, this man has dropped his principles. He's now uh, um, uh, he's now jumping on any bandwagon that will give him this price, and it's a very small price. I mean, how many cars can you drive? How many beds can you sleep on? I mean, we used to talk about that at length, but it is, I think, man's bane. You know, it is man's test.
I think it's a sign of immaturity, really. That's what I think. I think it's a sign of immaturity. I think whether it was childhood or whatever related, you know, I think it's a sign of immaturity that you want to, you know, you don't learn from your mistakes. I'm sure that has something to do with how you were raised, at least on the surface, materialistic level. Why people don't learn from their mistakes and why they keep wanting to repeat the same mistakes. Whether it's IQ related is debatable or not. I think you can be as dumb as a box of rocks but still have a heart of gold. So why is it that these people can, you know, do these things behind people's back? You know, I'll go into my opinions on this on an esoteric perspective. I think that it is a spiritual related issue that has happened due to the way that the universe is, between a battle of things that have gone on that we were unaware of. I think that's part of the reason why. I think this even goes back to the story of Cain and Abel, you know, the first murder that happened. I think that is a lot. I think that's a huge part to do with it on a whole nother level of that's completely beyond, you know, a lot of things we even consider through any of the stuff that most of us even realize on another level of things, another level of understanding things that kind of propelled a lot of this kind of stuff. You know, I think it on another side of this, I think what Shining was saying is that I think it takes courage to separate yourself from this, which it takes a lot of courage. I think you have to have a certain kind of mindset to go down that way. I think Some people are really good at painting and some people are really good at music. Everybody has a special something that helps that they're really good at, a little talent or whatever. I think some people just have an ability to see through things that others can't. It doesn't mean that you're better or not better than somebody else. It's just something that you can do. Um, and I think we have been so miseducated about these things, which is why we're having such a difficult time trying to explain why it is the world works the way that it does. Um, I think not everybody's going to see the way that you see things. I think a big failure. I don't know if failure is the right word. I think a big disservice that I think we might have done is that they have tried to get people to wake up into a certain respect that they see the way that they think the world should wake up to these realizations. They think that it should be a cookie cutter box of this is how it should be, and after you've been through all that, then this is how you should end up. And I think that's a huge problem that we have either have made ourselves personally, whether we knew it or not, that we have run into. I think everybody realizes things differently. I think everybody wakes up to the realization of where they live or who they are or whatever it is you want to call it in a different way. I have my own way of looking at it. Shining has his own way of looking at it, and Messenger does, and I'm sure everybody else does that's listening or watching or has watched or listened before. And it's not all the same. My view on things is, I don't care what happens to the world. I really don't. I think the world's chaos. I think it's a level of hell. That's my view on it. It doesn't mean I'm right. It's just the way I look at things. But other people will say, well, I don't really take that viewpoint, and that's fine. I think the point is that we all realize that there's something wrong, and we work towards trying to better ourselves in that regard. But I think the big disservice is that we all try to fit into this cookie cutter mold, and that's a hive mind when you try to do that. And that means that you don't have individuality, and I think that's the beginning stages of not having freedom in the long run to view how you want to view things. I think our society has also taken the viewpoint to try to assimilate people into a hive mind. Everything that I think I've seen over the last 5 or so years and even further has all tried to get people to assimilate to thinking one way all the time, and if other people don't view that, then screw you. There's a line, of course. There's a threshold. You can't just do whatever. That's kind of common sense. But when you lose that, then that's where they want you, because then you're easily manipulated. And I think that's what we see a lot of the manosphere nowadays is whatever somebody else says. If I make sure I say that too, then they'll like me. That's hive-minded behavior, or however you want to look at it. My point is, I think, the best thing that you can do, and this is kind of an addendum to my advice, what I was talking about, I like to kind of agree to disagree whenever I feel conflict with certain people, because there's no point in arguing. Arguing and getting in fights with people is a waste of time if you can't, uh, discuss things in a manner and agree to disagree, where you have your point, I have my point, that person has that point, and we don't get into a yelling and screaming match. That's why I love talking to you guys so much, because it gives me we are such a small number of people that have that kind of maturity, I guess you could say. I think it's part of also building up the relationship. But everybody on YouTube I see through the Manosphere just wants to argue about everything. They don't just say, okay, I get it, and that's your opinion, that's my opinion, and we can still live life and not hate each other afterwards.
That moves so nicely on to my last issue and subject. And I know this is something that you wanted to bring up, Messenger, but subjective and objective reality. What does it matter if people live in a delusional state? If life is better in the Matrix, or it feels better, or I'm happy doing this. What's wrong with that? And hopefully we can go into some of the metaphysics, something that it's not talked about often, but the metaphysical and the materialistic evidence for subjective and objective reality. What I mean is, for example, we have a village, because we all live in society. Whether you're a loner, whether you love seclusion, you live in society. at some point during the week or even during the day, you're going to have to interact with other people, with your neighbors, with your boss, with your friends, or when you go to the store. You cannot escape it. None of us here, no one listening, probably no one will ever listening to this, will be living in a log cabin in the middle of the Yukon in Alaska, or secluded from everyone, basically a caveman dweller. No, nobody lives like that. We all live as part of society. So what's wrong if this guy over here decides, well, this is my reality. I'm happy doing this. What does it matter to you? And I like to put it like this: if we were all living in a village, so think of it in a more micro level. If we all lived in a village, and some guy or some woman, let's put it, some woman decided that the best place to do a shit was in the well. This village only has one well, so this woman is shitting in the well, and the people are telling her, please do not shit in the well. You're poisoning the entire water
Big
system for
sign that
us.
says, "Don't shit in the well."
And she goes, but this is making me happy, and basically, you guys need the minerals anyway. So, in my reality, my subjective reality is shitting in the well is good for you all, but the rest of the people, they say no, it's not. Now, at what point do people, for example, the shills and the tribalistic idiots on YouTube that are selling their snake oil, that are selling misandry, and let's face it, racism is misandry. A lot of guys, I hate to name names, but Stefan Mollen Nazi, he's a proper shill. He's selling misandry. He's selling hatred of other men. Now, at what point do we say, look, listen, it might be a subjective reality to you, but the fact is you're harming other people. So,
So basically, what's the point? Like, what's the line between when is insanity okay?
yeah, that's it. When is it okay to be a crazy piece of shit? Shitting on everybody else. I mean, let's face it. These snake oil salesmen, they're doing more harm than good. Let's face it. And let's face it. We're in a society where people are like that. People say, "Well, I know this is bad for me, but fuck it, I'm going to do it." People will do things that are bad for them. People will have beliefs, will have a subjective reality that's bad for them,
It's
and
'cause
other
they're
people
insane.
they'll
They're crazy.
refuse. They'll refuse to take things or do things. Uh, the comment section is. I've always said, Element, you've got the best comment section in all the. I don't know
I'll
where
take
these guys come
like
from.
I
They come
have the
out of
best
nowhere. I'm
comment
asking them
section on
where their
all of
other accounts.
YouTube.
But anyway, and guys, the guys that I know that are doing some things, for example, exercise, for example, seclusion for meditation, stuff like that. They think it's crazy. They think it's kooky, and they think, well, I'm not going to do this, even though they know it's good for them. So, at what point, is subject reality, is objective reality, is materialistic metaphysical evidence, is that stuff important? I know it's a big question. Messenger, please take it away.
Well, I mean, the examples you give, it's a case of personal choice. Your subjective reality is everything that enters your field of perception, everything your senses perceive, and then it's processed by your brain. So you could say everything external to your brain's processes really happens inside your head. What you see is processed by the occipital lobe. What you hear is processed by the temporal lobe. You know, these regions of the brain create what you see, what you hear, and everything else the senses perceive. And you only perceive those things because you're in that environment. Now, the point is, if Stefan Molinazzi is in your subjective reality, that's because you choose to go to places where you will see him speak, you'll see his videos. You can remove him from your subjective reality by choice, and then he is no longer part of your existence. So, the man who lives in a cabin in the woods might have chosen to do so. And if you had this conversation with him, he'd say, I have no clue what you're talking about. I don't even know these people exist. What are you talking about? because that's not part of his subjective reality. So what's subjective and objective? I mean, really, objective reality. It's been debated whether objective reality even exists, because things don't exist unless they're observed. You know, it's like, without getting into quantum physics, what's subjective to us is what we expose ourselves to. What's subjective to others is their reality. It's completely different to ours. You know, you might be talking about a Kalahari bushman or an Inuit, you know, an Eskimo, who says that's not the way the world is, because the things they perceive are completely different to the things we perceive, because they're in a completely different cultural environment. So as far as objective reality, I don't believe in such a thing. Subjective reality is something you can shape to a large extent, if you really want to. If you like complaining about certain YouTubers, or you like feeling offended or whatever, then that can become part of your subjective experience. You know, you can say, oh, he's a cunt, he's a racist, he's fucking this and that. But you only get to have that opinion because you chose to make him a part of your life and listen to his objectionable views. So yeah, again, it's part of, right, what sort of life do I want to live? What sort of environment do I want to be in? Do I want to be in this objective reality matrix that they're trying to sell us? This is the way the world is, you know, and we look at it and say, I don't want to be a part of that. And it's not always the way they tell us it is in their eyes. They sell you a dream and you say, I want my life to be like that. And then you go off in that direction and it turns out completely differently. So that objective reality bubble that's held out like a fucking carrot on a stick, I think it's just bullshit. I think it's like a salesman tactic. Whereas subjective reality is what's real, what you actually see, feel, experience, things that leave a mark on you, things that psychologically affect you and change, you know, your brain's wiring. That is subjective. Everything else, I don't know. People are playing characters on social media anyway. So you say that Stefan Molyneux's a cunt. He might be a really nice guy in real life. He might just be,
True.
you know, trying to be the devil's advocate because he likes to debate. So we don't know what's subjective, what's objective. All we know is what we see and feel is real to us. That's why we passionately put our points across, and we say, no, the world isn't like that. The world's like this, and it is for us. And when
I
people
think
say,
that's a
no, it's
great
not, it's
point.
almost like gaslighting. You say, don't fucking tell me it's not like that, because I've been there, man. You know, this is my fucking life we're talking about. And it is real for you. But for them, it's not. And they might not understand that. They might not comprehend that. And they say, oh, you're a bullshitter. You're exaggerating, whatever. And the next thing you know, you feel gaslighted. They think you're an idiot. You think they're an idiot. And the whole thing breaks down because you've just got two different opinions of what reality is. So there you go. That's the best I can do.
That's like someone in an alternate reality saying, no, that tree is upright. No, it's actually upside down, but the person is seeing it from a different reality. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, if you really want to get down to breath, like if you really want a brain teaser and really get into some pretty deep stuff, Messenger made a great point there that when it comes down to like quantum mechanics, I don't understand. I am so basic on this, so I don't know anything compared to some of these people. And even the scientists, they don't know anything about this either. I think that some of them do, but they're not going to tell anybody because it freak people out. But I think of it this way: you're an atom, right? We're all made of atoms. You're an atom. This goes into the observer effect. So you're an atom on one side of the universe, and then there's another atom, which is your friend on the other side of the universe. They're on both opposite parts, right? So it's like, think of it like a globe. Let's make it easier. It's the world, the Earth, and you're on one side of the Earth in the space, and the other person's on another side of the world. You're both in space, but you're both seeing the world in a different perspective. It's like looking at it's like looking at a picture two-dimensionally, but when you change it, it makes three-dimension, four-dimension, whatever. You're both in the same area, but you're seeing things from a different perspective, which I guess you could say technically you're in a different part of reality because of that. So if you really want to get deep with it, think of it like, everybody that you think is like plugged in, think of it this way, like everybody's plugged into a VR game, right? And they're in one simulation called Earth, and the next person is in the same simulation, but a different program is running for them compared to you. And they're both in the same area, but what's being fed into their brains through the device is different for them compared to you. Everybody has a different program, a different set of experiences that they're experiencing in the simulation. So, this is why, when you look at people like schizophrenics, they hallucinate. They see things differently. I believe the thing about the schizophrenics, I'll just go ahead and lay it how I see it, that I haven't ever talked about this before, about what I think about this kind of, like people with mental illnesses. I think when you look at the history of schizophrenics and certain people with mental illnesses, they've all been sexually abused when they're kids, number one. And I think what happens is when that happens, when they go through rape, what happens is their third eye gets opened. And that third eye in the mind is the thing that allows them to see a different perspective of reality. However that works, that's what that whole third eye stuff, it's none of this new age stuff. It's nothing good, I can tell you that. It's demonic and it's very bad. But they're able to, the reason why they hallucinate is because they see things from a different reality, because their brains have been rewired in such a way that they're able to see into a different part of reality. That's why they see things that are so real to them that we can't see. I remember watching this person on YouTube said that they would hallucinate and see all these things. I don't think it's just mental illness. I don't think they're just crazy. Even if it is that they're just crazy, why is it that doctors can't explain what it is? Nobody has found out where it comes from, because it's not of the physical, it's of the spiritual. That's why they can't just cure people of this stuff. That's why they can throw all these drugs at people and it doesn't change the fact that they can still see things. And it never goes away, because I think it's a spiritual thing. They're seeing into another side of reality that people just don't understand, that only they can see through a traumatic experience. This is, why they did a bunch of experimentation into MK Ultra, because they wanted to find out how the mind worked. The mind is the key of, a lot of stuff. The mind is what perceives your version of reality. So what on earth is going on in the mind that they're so interested in, that they want to figure out? And why is it that they did all this stuff that they're not telling anybody about, to try to figure out how the mind works? Just because there's something so powerful about the human mind. It is so beyond our comprehension how it works. It's quantum, it's other dimensional, it's so beyond physical reality and so beyond any of that stuff. That's why they made drugs illegal, because when you take LSD and any of these other psychedelics, you experience a different fact of reality that's like a veil that's been pulled above you. That's why they see all these different things, because they're able to see a different set of reality. And so they made it illegal because they don't want people having a different perspective. And this is why, certain people have called it perception manipulation. What do they call it? Reality control. Because they want they want to program your brain to view reality, Earth, the universe, whatever you want to call this realm, this place and above it, a certain way, like a dream world. And they only want you to view it that way. So they don't want any other stimulus. And that's why all things are regulated. And they only want you to watch the news. And they only want you to follow these guidelines and don't break the mold and be a part of this hive mind. Because if you see things the way in a different reality, it could change things for yourself, and you'll break out of what you call the matrix. The matrix is something so beyond the physical. It's mental, it's spiritual, it's all of that. So my point is, this is why in Hollywood they always try to get everybody to aspire to be these celebrities, because it keeps them hoping, it keeps the illusion of what that is going. and aspire to be something. It's a fake simulation type of experience that everybody tries to go after, but they never achieve it because it's a lie, and the whole world is a lie, and on a level all the way down to the smallest to the biggest. And
The,
so it's a big deal, and it's a serious deal. And I've been trying to figure out this stuff, and it is just so beyond the physical. The mind is so powerful, and whatever is going on that we call reality, it is so detached from anything that we even consider the physical or anything above it. So anyways, my point is, I'm sorry to be long-winded here, but this is why I don't care about any politics. I don't care about any nonsense on YouTube or any of this nonsense, because what I have understood from my own looking into things, that stuff is like playing with Legos when you're in a lab that have the techniques and tools to be able to split atoms. It's just a waste of time, and it's just like once you see that, everything changes and things get put into perspective of what really matters.
they play on human nature. They prod at the things, at man's weakness, at the things man crumble to. That's what Hollywood does. But the reason I brought up, and I've only got a few more minutes before I'm going to have to jump out, and it was absolutely fantastic listening to you, Messenger, but to get this discussion with you, Element. I know we're in contact on a daily basis, but we hardly ever talk in depth on these issues. But the reason why I brought up that issue was because my conclusion is, and it would have been something that I would have made a video on, is that everyone, and this is going to sound strange, everyone wants to change the world, even if it means their own little world, which is why the subjective and objective reality to them, so long as you see, people complain, people make videos. If we look at the microcosm, people, the YouTubers, most of them, they make videos because they want to change the world, even if they deny it. They say, no, I'm doing this for your sake. No, we even even with the matter of altruism, even if we're trying to get men to understand, get men to look after themselves, get men not to do something rash and crazy, we're doing it because we want to change the world. We want to not have this world where the suffering is everywhere, is around every corner. And man, I couldn't believe it. I was watching this documentary about the Hutus and the Tutsis, and I was listening to this man talk about what happened to him, and I was in tears. I couldn't believe it. I don't know this man. I couldn't associate with this man in any. He didn't even speak English. I couldn't associate with this man, but his story, what was, and many men's stories, they touched me, um, uh, emotionally. I just didn't. I didn't know. Like I said, I didn't know that men did care about each other in this way. And we complain because we do want to change the world. When you make a video about, oh, this is going on over there, or this is the situation, you're trying to get people to come into your reality. And I have to point out what Aaron Rubin says, and he spelled out what I'm trying to say here. And he says people don't want to live in the real world. They're too cowardly to change it for the better. They want to bury their heads in the sand and hope it goes away. I would add to that people want to change the world, but in a very passive way. I think that's my point here. A lot of people are shying from the point that they want to make things better, even if it's just within their own world. They want to make things better for their own world, for others. But yeah, I think that was the point I wanted to make about people's reality. People, they do want to change the world, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having a better neighborhood, trying to stop people from shitting in the well, trying to stop men from selling misandry, and stop the government from imposing gynocentrism. What is wrong with that? No, what is wrong with that?
No, I agree. I think you're right in that respect. And sort of touching on what Element was saying about schizophrenia, and if someone has a psychotic episode, or they would say they suffered a psychosis, meaning they've lost touch with reality. Who's to say what reality really is? and it's been hotly debated, whether psychosis can actually be a diagnosis of someone. You've suffered a psychosis. Well, what's reality? How can I lose touch with reality? Define it for me. Your reality, my reality, the imagined reality that everybody is chasing, this dream, and is that a reality worth attaching yourself to, or recognizing the latest iPhone, the this year's car, the biggest flat screen TV? Is that reality? Is that the reality they're talking about? Have we lost touch with that one? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because for us, that's a good thing. So, yeah, reality for us, it's subjective, and like you say, we want the world to be a better place. We try, and we do it because we have compassion for other men like us and other men who could potentially be in the situations we've been in, and we've got empathy, and we don't want to see them go down that road. So, it's difficult, but it just comes down to reflection. As long as we isolate ourselves from that objective reality out there, in order to, and not as a result of being scared or afraid of what's happening in that big wide world outside our front doors, but we isolate ourselves to reflect on how it's affecting us, how we affect other people, and what changes we can affect, if any. And if we can't, we're wasting our time and effort. If we can, there's no harm in putting a message out there and leaving it for others. Because I went to this channel, which is my old channel, my backup channel, and I thought, nobody's watching these videos. Maybe I'll make them all private. Nobody cares about men anyway. And when I went there this morning, I just saw the odd comment from 3 days ago, a week ago, a month ago, just the odd men stopping by saying, I know how you feel because this happened to me. And when I saw that, I thought, now this is why I came here. Not for subscribers, not for donations, not for clicks or likes or any of that. Just to find that odd man who's looking for another voice that he can relate to. And if that helps him and changes his world, makes it a better world for him, then, it was worth it. It was worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, what was I going to say? I think that's about that's the best we can do, for others, and to, realize that we're all trying to get through life. We're all trying to figure this thing out. We're all trying to survive the best we can, and everybody has their way of doing it, and I think what we must realize is that any kind of division is an enemy. Any kind of confrontation that's unnecessary and that doesn't benefit us is the enemy, because that stuff has never worked for us. And we can see through YouTube itself what's happened because of that. We see what kind of shambles that, yelling and fighting and screaming at each other has brought in us. That certainly didn't help. So, just, avoid that, because you're going to end up in the same position. And that's the last thing we need at this point in time in history, with all division ramping itself up even further. The last thing we need is to have more of that. We've had plenty of that time and civilization. Again, last thing we need is to have that happen any further. And if it means that we go down with the ship, then we go down with the ship peacefully. We don't yell and scream and freak out. We know what we know, and there's no point for us to freak out, because we don't know what's going on. We're very aware, and we've spent the time to realize these things, and there's no need to freak out or get upset. It's human nature. We all get upset at times, but there's no need to freak out as whatever kind of chaos is going on out there. It's like, I guess it's the martial. I think it's some kind of martial art, or it's in the martial art realm of maybe it's even Buddhism. I think that's kind of that realm. You know, to be calm and in peace when chaos is all around you is like the best trait to have. When everybody else is freaking out and going crazy, you're calm, and when you're calm, you can figure out what to do, and you be at peace. Because one thing that's not in this world very much right now is peace, and when you can have that, you've won the lottery. Because you know most people don't have that. So, with that being said, I really don't know what else to really what else to say. Messengers or anything else you would want to touch upon?
No, you said it all. That's the end game for most of the men I've seen who've reached a conclusion. They just found peace. They just have a nice, peaceful life. No dramas, no trauma, no pain. And that's not a bad place to be.
Yeah, especially nowadays, that's like heaven. The heaven is peace. I mean, if you want to achieve heaven on earth, then you have peace, you know, in your mind. I think that's how you do it. And with that being said, you know, appreciate everybody for tuning in today, and thank you to shout out to Shining, of course, for setting this up today, and getting everybody together to touch upon everything and see how everybody is doing. And I'm sure we'll do this again at some point in time. But it's always good to get together and see where everybody is at. Always to keep things stable. I feel like we're the only people left from this, you know, from the YouTube realm that you know, kind of fell apart there, and everything got thrown out except the kitchen sink, and we're the kitchen sink, so we're just going to keep producing water the best we can. And you know, with that being said, thank you everybody for tuning in tonight, or this morning would be my time tonight if you're in the UK, or early afternoon, I think, anywhere else in the world. So yeah, thank you, Messenger, thank you, Shining, for coming on, and until the next time, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Element.